and the incomparable Adrian Lyne.
It's so great to have Adrian with us this season. Be kind. I'm going to be really kind, and if you're British, if I lay it on too thick with the compliments, let me know. I'll tone it down. But first, I just want to start with, if you saw the movie Mandy in IFC theaters, you changed me and the director's life. We got a 14-week theatrical run because of this theater. So just thank you, and just keep supporting cinema. And now we get to have Adrian here to talk about this movie.
Very flattered to see you.
And so Adrian came in a little late, he didn't get to see. How many of you are seeing the movie for the first time tonight?
Wow.
Quite a lot, yeah.
In this era, I think something that we're all trying to do as filmmakers is make something that lasts, has an impact that holds on to memory, because so many things are strangely forgettable, or they just enter the cultural ether and vanish. And somehow, this movie has hung on for you. What are your thoughts about that?
When it came, can you hear me? Is it me? When it came out for the first time, the critics weren't very kind to it. They said that it was gobbledygook and stuff like that. And I think that maybe you have to see the movie twice to sort of understand it, but because obviously it's about a man who's dying in Vietnam, and he remembers his marriage with Sarah and his son who got killed. But he also imagines a relationship with Jessie that he obviously doesn't actually have. So that's a lot to take in, I think, in one go. But I'm pleased because people obviously did see it more than once, and it seems to have stuck with them. And I'm pleased that people seen it before who saw it this time.
I'm going to give a little introduction. You can correct me if I get it totally wrong. You were born in North London, is that right? Grew up in Highgate? Okay. Yeah. And then studied in Highgate area, North London, and you went to the cinema a lot, and that was the era of like the French New Wave. Like that was the stuff you were really into. Yeah. And so how did you make the leap then? He's a contemporary of Ridley Scott. I think he's a friend of yours. Alan Parker, and Tony Scott, another, and how did you make the leap then from just being a lover of cinema to directing in Britain commercials, which was this route for this generation of filmmakers in your period?
Well, I had a very inglorious year as an accountant. Obviously, I was quite hopeless at. And I used to play the trumpet. That was something I was really sort of excited about, more than accountants. But the guy in the accountant's firm said to me, because I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, if you don't know what you're going to do, you should go to an advertising agency, because there's so many different things to do there. Working television and art. So I went there, and I watched people like John Schlesinger shooting cigarette commercials on them, and eventually somebody gave me the chance, and I hadn't got the slightest idea what I was doing, and really I'm horrified by it, and eventually sort of gradually, I'm still there. Gradually learned how to do it, I guess.
But there's these things, so this is where I'm going to get into the complimentary part. I don't mean to embarrass you. Hallmarks of your work. One of them, I think that it is just super underrated about you. I want to say too, I want to give some context that just before this movie, Adrian had directed a movie, Fatal Attraction, which I was a kid when it came out, so I didn't get to see it then. But it was, I remember as a child, was such a cultural footprint zeitgeist movie. I mean, SNL had sketches about it. You were nominated for Best Director at the Oscars, along with your performers. You'd made this tremendous, hit, so you had some cachet to spend on something. And the choice was this. But what I'm really interested in is all of your work, performance, actors, I feel they give some of their best, most vulnerable, unguarded performances. I mean, this movie has a murderer's row of great actors, all doing some of, I think, their career best work. Tim Robbins was really known for comedies up until this movie. And where did you get this interest in dramaturgy and communicating with actors and facilitating this sense? I feel when I watch your movies, I'm getting to see a really secret side of people. And that's part of the story, you know?
Well, Paramount were going to make the movie. Is this thing on? Is it all right?
You gotta hold it up to your mouth.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's great. Just right.
Yes, Paramount were going to make it because I've done, as you said, Fatal Attraction with them, and then they sort of chickened out right at the last minute. So I made this company called Carol Co. And I talked about the movie. I talked about the movie with Bruce Rubin, who was the writer. I talked to him about it for a year, literally a year. He just sort of sat and talked about the thing. And his idea of it was very different from mine. He saw it in a sort of Judeo-Christian sort of way, you know, where heaven was sunbeams and clouds and all this staircase stuff. I used to sort of kid him. I'd say this is a sort of Liberace version. and I thought that if you, for example, if you did demons with like the guy with the pitchfork and the tail and you know like that, either they'd laugh or they'd seen it before, so it wouldn't be frightening. So with this, I tried to do it sort of flesh-based. There was a horrendous. It was a drug called thalidomide that was used, I think, in the 50s, and it brought about terrible distortions of people's bodies. You know, like tiny hands and awful. So I tried to base it sort of on that, and you know, so it was flesh-based, and so that you couldn't reject it because you hadn't seen it before, and it was really frightening. But also, I wanted it to be sort of murky, and I looked at the paintings of Francis Bacon, for example, where it's sort of blurred and smudged, and you feel that there's awful things going on underneath where you can't see it. And so I tried to do that with this, you know, with the blurry stuff, and when I shot, I like 4 frames to get that was it nervous actually. I would get the actors to sort of move around like this. Shooting 4 frames. And it was quite often it was absurd at a second, but it worked at half a second or a quarter of a second. And so the whole thing was sort of hit and miss like that. And I didn't want to do any of the special effects afterwards. I wanted to do it in the camera, you know. And so it was very much trial and error and hit and miss. I mean, for example, in the subway at the beginnings, there's the homeless guy lying there, and there's this sort of thing appears that looks a bit like a penis, and it didn't work when it sort of came out. I don't know whether you remember this. But when it came out like that, it was silly, and it almost looked like an erection. It was daft. But when you reversed it became like a furtive thing, you know, this thing curling away, and you couldn't get a hook on it. You couldn't sort of really, you just didn't know what it was. So I did that really. I did, as I said, it's very much trial and error. Sometimes it worked, sometimes. And not to see enough of it, but always to maybe, hopefully let the audience want more rather than giving them too much. Because if there's too much, then there's no mystery, then there's no fear, there's nothing. Well, just that.
And then they bring their imagination to complete.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the imagination is going to be better than anything I can do.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about you're shooting it, it's kind of silly on set, but then you get down to 8, 12 frames, you're talking about the editing. Once you were in editing, you'd see.
No, this was shooting at 4
Oh,
frames.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
rather than shooting at 24 frames, shooting at 4 frames.
And then, yeah, it speeds up.
I mean, there was a very macabre photographer called Joel Peter Whitkin who did, and he did a marvelous image, which I used actually in the film of a man without any legs, just a trunk basically, sitting on a sort of iron bed, if you like, and he had a sort of mask on. But what was interesting was it was blurred like that. This was a picture. And I thought it was so interesting because you can see it because it's obviously underneath the mask, but it was just this feeling of such poor guy that just tortured, you know. And so I tried to do that with shape of thing.
Well, the script had a reputation before you were attached to it. It was like one of the great unproduced scripts, right?
Yes.
When you first read it, I find that this is such a conceptually strong idea that you went away from the medieval iconography demons to Francis Bacon and this photographer. Was that like, when you first read it, did that occur to you, or during that year of development?
As I say, it was to try and make it be flesh-based. I mean, another example would be that, you know, when he goes to the hospital and the nurse is telling him that the doctor's not there, and he's looking up at the records, and then she bends down and her hat falls off, and it says in the script that she has horns. Now I find if she'd had horns like a bison or something like that, it would have been hilarious, you know. So I thought this sort of idea of having these sort of bony sort of protrusions that you really couldn't get a fix on made it genuinely frightening. I mean, made it awful.
I'm about to hand this over to the audience for questions, but just to follow up on that, hand in hand with that, conceptually, visually, I find all your work has this very grounded human, like, rhythm. Like, there's always these little grace notes of human behavior that we've seen that might be unusual. The nurse is an example. Like, she's complaining about her lunch, and she drops the files. And you know, as a working screenwriter, I'm throwing my peers under the bus by saying, I don't think some of these things can be written. So I'm curious about how you find them on the day as a director. You know?
What I love seeing bits and pieces in the street where I steal it from my wife. But I saw something the other day. Sitting in a cafe, and this woman walked by us with her son of about 9, I'd say. And they're walking past us on the street, and the kid had one of his pant legs rolled up to his knee. Only one. The other one was fine. And I thought, why was he like that? Was it bitten? Did he have a bite? Was it itchy? But suddenly what was fabulous was this was a real kid. This was a real kid, not one from Central Casting, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm going to use that in it's only a tiny thing, but I love that those bits of reality that people sort of recognize as being real without sort of knowing. Like,
That's fantastic.
I love that stuff.
So let's open it up to the audience. Who's got a question? First hand I saw was back in the corner there.
Just wanted to say, first of all, it's one of my favorite movies, and such an honor that you came to join us today.
So much.
I've seen this movie dozens of times, and my biggest question is, it seems to me there's a parallel to the short story by Ambrose Bierce, The
Yes.
Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. I just wanted to know if you wanted to talk about that and discuss that, if that was part of the original script, or as you were saying, as you were going along in production, to incorporate maybe some of those imageries.
No, I think that Bruce had that short film, short story by Ambrose bridge in the American Civil War, and he's arrested, and they put a rope around his neck. They're going to hang him, and he gets away. He somehow drops into a river and swims like a lady, and he gets back. Eventually goes back to his house, where his wife is. It's the most marvelous performance because the wife's smile and seeing him again is just extraordinary. And of course, all of this happens. He doesn't get away at all. All of this happens while the rope is dropping and just gets killed. And so that's the same premise in a way, I guess. But it was tough for people. I mean, in one go, we had other scenes that I thought were quite good that I cut out. One was a kind of antidote scene with the chemist, and stuff came through the ceiling. It was a monster. It was quite good at like eye, and I was quite proud of this. But the audience was so catatonic by the end and not understanding. I think it'd probably be a good idea to leave it out. And there were two other scenes. There was one where his wife Jetty is a transformation. Again, I'm quite proud of it. It was quite exciting. But I think by that time the audience, as I say, was catatonic. And it's funny. The head of the studio, a nice man called Carol, we're all getting depressed because everybody's getting frustrated by the movie. And he said, put it in. He said, nobody understands it anyway.
What happened to executives like that?
I should have done.
I want to add, it said at the start, it had a note that you personally supervised the grade and the restoration. It's fantastic. The grain is not dead, it's alive. You didn't use any weird DNR and AI smoothing of faces. People look human. It's a fantastic restoration. Maybe sitting in the back, like in this projection room, but yeah, it matches my memories of seeing it in 35.
That's what I saw when I never done.
No, it was never. And was there any? Did you have any desire to go back and futz with the edit at this point, or you're like, you made your peace with those deleted scenes because they're really cool. You can. Oh no. You can find them though. You know. How was it? It's coming out on disc. I pre-ordered the 4K Blu-ray. Yeah, so the deleted scenes will be out.
And it's great that it's hung around. For me,
That's the greatest you can hope for. We have more questions.
say that again, sorry.
Ken Kesey, the psychedelic guru. I know that Bruce was very tied into that community, but was it anything for you? Yeah.
No, I'm sort of more pragmatic than Bruce. Bruce was a sort of mystic. I mean, he was fascinating, really. I mean, he spent a lot of time in India. And I sort of been, as I say, a little bit but it was great, you know. It's a very lucky.
I have to admit, I found an interview with you from 1990, which you said the first time you met Bruce, he had a halo. Were you just pulling the reporter's leg, or?
No, it was amazing. I was talking to him, he was right down the other end of the room, and we were talking endlessly about demons and angels and he had this halo, like a sort of electrical sort of thing moving around above his head. And I said to him, the strangest things going on over the top of your head. And he said, and there is with you.
Now I have the worst screenwriter imposter syndrome. No one's ever said you have a halo. It's always well told. But anyway, you were. Wait, you have a question?
think a lot of the problem I had really was people understanding it. Because in one go, it's a lot to understand, but it was, his marriage was weird. He was dying in Vietnam, and he was imagining while he was dying his relationship with Jessica, would be much like this. So it's tough to sort out reality from this.
Do you mind if I ask the audience a question about this? Because I'm just kind of curious about, with modern visual language and literacy, for any of you who saw it for the first time tonight, could you raise your hand if you were confused by it, or did it track really well? Yeah, very few people. I think in a weird way, time-wise, it caught up, you know, because yeah, I see the influence of this movie in Seven. I'm even gonna say people get mad at me, but David Lynch. One thing I'm really curious about is like,
You said Seven?
yeah, the
Seven.
David Fincher movie. Yeah, but I think it's influenced by this. Absolutely.
No, it's not David Lynch. It's
Oh, Fincher. But I was also gonna say, there's a very interesting choice in this movie in the year you were developing the script, that Jacob has an alternate reality with a whole other life. Like, there's, it's a man imagining on the precipice of Bardo, this in-between limbo state, that he has a whole other life. And then I feel like Lynch in the 90s did a few films, kind of, Lost Highway, or Twin Peaks goes with similar ideas. And then the compression of time, where the start of the film and the end of the film, the 2 hours in between are actually a few minutes, really, playing out this guy's head. That's, Nolan's 10, Donnie Darko. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a few hours, and they say he fought, to survive. But I'm saying, I feel like this movie's been very influential in ways that maybe haven't been recognized.
Well, during the AIDS era, I did have a number of people who quoted Danny Aiello's speech, which I thought was very moving, this idea of when demons becoming angels when you're not hanging on to your life. And I had lots of interesting letters in those days, letters from people who were dying.